Showtime.
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 Showtime. Greetings, minions, ladies and gentlemen, all the ships at sea. How the hell are you? Welcome in, everybody, once again to another edition of Best Damn Sports Talk, period. I'm sorry, it was just one of the... It's kind of like that old bit from television where, I mean, for those of us who've been in it for more than 10 minutes, you go to your ear and you go, can I hear? Can I hear? Is everything okay? There's nothing there. It's only just habit. That's all it is. That's what happens when you're old. You've been in this business a million years. Thanks so much for joining us right here on Best Damn Sports Talk, period, on the YouTube channel. We remind you once again that while this show is live, you will have the ability to text in wherever you're watching it along social media. This is a show that I am thrilled to put together because the great thing about doing media anymore is the ability to bring great friends together. And a lot of you heard me tell the story that back in the early aughts, '03, when I was in Boston, and I was there for 4 years, I made the best friends I've ever made in my life that all came from New England. And that's after, when I moved there, people said to me, you won't have friends here for 20 years. Why is that? You're not from New England. They don't trust anybody here. Stop. That ended. I have more friends in New England and Boston than I have at any place else, despite the fact my guests today no longer live in New England. They've all moved on, but that's where it all started. Let me first of all bring in this young lady I met while I was there. She was with ESPN. She has been with ESPN for many, many years as one of their most respected program directors, program managers. She knows sports inside and out like nobody I have ever met before. And we got to be friends in the Boston years. She is no longer with ESPN. That's their fault, damn it. This lady should be working there, for crying out loud, but that's the way things change. And now, of course, she's in Florida with the rest of us. Why? Don't come to Florida. It's hot. It's buggy. It's muggy. It's not... Well, okay, we'll get to that later. It is an absolute complete pleasure to welcome Louise Cornetta into Best Damn Sports Talk, period. You look awesome. Great to see you.
Thank you. Oh, so good to see you. It's been too long. But yes, I'm much happier here in Florida than I was in Boston.
Well, okay, is it just weather, right? That's going to be the reason?
It's paradise here. It's absolute paradise. I couldn't be happier. I don't mind the heat.
See, it's the funny thing. I mean, I moved here when I was a kid into South Florida. I was a teenager. And for those of us who've been here a long time, many of us are now going, the greatest moment in our lives will be when we see Welcome to Florida in the rearview mirror. Because it's too damn hot, Louise. It just, but I get the whole thing about the paradise, and we will probably get into that as we go along. It is great to see you. I'm also going to welcome in, this gentleman was probably the first guest on my show on CN8, which was created by Comcast, and it was called Sports Pulse. And it was really, truly a bit of a groundbreaking show in New England at the time, because we had great guests, we had great fun, and we pissed off a lot of people in the local cable communities. I will still never forget the gentleman who came to me from Nesson, which is the big power there in Boston, who said to me, you can't do that shit here in New England. What? He said, there's a pecking order in New England, and you've got to learn how to be part of the pecking order. I bit my tongue in half. It snapped when I came out, and the word that came out of my mouth did not endear me to him for the rest of our time together. But it was all just the pecking order. We never got along with it, and we had great fun. This guy remains one of the great people that I have always respected over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mike Petraglia, who joins us here on Best Damn Sports Talk, period. You look great, buddy. How you been?
See what I wore, Ed? See what I wore? This is in your honor.
And why did you?
And I'm going to an Earth, Wind, and Fire concert tonight.
And why did you wear that? Because
in your honor. Look what you're wearing. Look what you have always worn. You've always stayed true to your brand, Ed, and I have always admired that about you.
What Mike is pointing out is we always had Tropical Shirt Friday on the show. And I always took off the shirt and tie and wore a tropical shirt. And again, somebody from the local media came to me and said, that shit doesn't fly here in New England. I said, oh, screw off. Go get a Hawaiian shirt. And Mike, remember, they were pissed off at my cowboy boots, too.
Oh, I do. Oh, your cowboy boots are certainly something that you have trademarked to your personality.
And I think
it is part of the Ed Berliner brand. There's no question about that.
It is. Although here these days, it's just sneakers. I
By the way,
yes.
You mentioned the pecking order. I see who writes better than I do. Even though I had more appearances than anybody else on your program, you invite Louise on first. And
ladies first, young man.
I understand that. But I also understand the pecking order in your mind. And all due respect, Louise deserves priority. There is no question about that. Louise, and I think she knows that I think that.
Louise, quietly, Mikey just dogged you. Just a little bit.
I think it was a compliment somewhere in there.
I think
there it was, Louise. Let me make that explicitly clear. It was a compliment.
Okay, but again, on my show, it is always ladies first. So
yes,
and think of it this way, Mike. You get to play cleanup, which is the big slot. There you go.
Yep. And chauvinism is not dead on your program. I understand.
Chauvinism is completely dead.
Chivalry.
Okay,
Chivalry is not dead.
You.
Oh my God! It's too early in the morning. It's what, 11:07? Still too early.
11:07 Eastern time. What are you now that you're in Cincinnati? You sleep till noon?
Close. I'm back to be a nighttime guy, and Louise can relate with this. Back in her early days at ESPN, she was not only a nighttime lady, she was an overnight lady, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Louise?
Yep. I'd ride all night. Days. Yep. Back in the day.
Well, no more back in the day. Now we get to do things in the daytime. We get to be actual daytime animals now, and we don't have to go to every game. Not that those of us have places we can go to every game, but that's another story altogether. Louise, have you been to Tampa Bay yet to see the Rays play?
Yes, I've been to Tampa to see the Rays. I was at one of the Heat playoff games. Try and get around as much as possible.
Okay. Well, I want to start off with baseball here because seeing as hockey season's done, basketball season's done, NFL, we can talk about 365. But I wanted to get into this with the two of you because Mike and Louise, you both covered the Red Sox heavily. And I was there being part of that as well and doing it. And baseball is interesting to me at this point because I think it's time for Major League Baseball to finally understand their pecking order. Speaking of that, because baseball is no longer the America's pastime. It hasn't been for a long time. It isn't number 2 because you can actually make a case that the NFL and the NBA are 1 and 2. You can even make a case that MLS is number 3. And in some demographic cases, you might make a point in some cities that the NHL is even number 4. And then there's college football. Baseball needs to understand they're no longer the big gun anymore. But the key is, what do they do about it? Because let's be honest, Mike will talk about the Reds in a minute, and I want to talk about the team that everybody loves to hate. But very few people are talking about baseball on a national level these days. It's like we don't care. Why?
Well, I think baseball was really, really slow to adopting any changes. They stood behind, this is the way we've always done it. We're going to continue to do it this way. And by doing that, these 4-hour games and people lost interest, especially young people. And young people are into the gambling aspect, and they didn't make that easy either. So I think a lot of those reasons are why it took so long it didn't take long for people to drop off of baseball. And now that they are, I'll give them kudos. The games are a lot shorter. I never thought I'd see a Yankees Red Sox game that was like under 3.5 hours, and it is now. So I give them credit for all this, but it's a little late to the party.
Yeah, but Mike, don't they have to realize that it has passed them by? And, no one talks about baseball. Look, they talk about Ohtani because he's a generational talent. But I've had people on the show before, Rob Bradford, our old buddy, who has written books about Major League Baseball. Pete
baseball
Shepard,
isn't boring.
Baseball isn't boring. And, maybe he's right, but whether or not it's boring or not, you could have players that are star players from teams walk right in front of you at a restaurant. Most people would never know who they are. They wouldn't have any clue. A football player, and in some cases a basketball player, everybody in the building will know who they are, Mike. They lost it, and it doesn't seem like the players of the game is interested in getting it back.
Well, okay, a couple of things here. First of all, one of the reasons that is the case is what Louise brought up. The younger population in general doesn't pay as close attention to athletes as they used to. And what are younger people on? They're on social media almost 24/7, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, stories, Twitter, not so much Twitter anymore, but certainly even Facebook is making a comeback. There are all of these social media platforms, Snapchat, and baseball did not promote all of their personalities across these social media channels the way the other sports did.
How could they have screwed that up, Mike?
Mike, do you remember at Fenway, they banned us from using Twitter in the clubhouse?
Yes.
Like if we were caught tweeting, we
do
would lose our
remember that.
credential. I mean, that's how slow they were to the party. They just
Correct.
absolutely were against it, and it hurt them.
Well, how
It
much
totally
of it is...
hurt them.
Go ahead.
And they didn't play the long game. Not to cut you both off.
No.
Baseball didn't understand the long game of promoting their sport. The NFL didn't really have to rely on that as much because of their TV exposure, which was, everybody with a TV is watching the NFL on Sundays and Mondays and even Thursday nights now. The NBA did a phenomenal job with social media. They embraced it. That's why they're a solid number 2 right behind the NFL. There's no question about that. Baseball just was very slow to the party. They've come around to that a little bit. They had to address their actual product, which was the game itself and why it was taking 3.5 to 4 hours to play every single game. They've done that. They've done a good job. I think the pitch clock and all of that has shortened the game. And I'm still a baseball fan. I still, and I live in a baseball-centric town like Cincinnati. Even though they've gone through 20 years of almost a drought,
mediocrity,
if you will, of relevancy, more than just being mediocre. They really fell out of relevancy in a town that has Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the Bengals.
Well, wait a minute, hang on a second. Let me hit on that because you just used the word relevancy. So
yes.
With everything that's going around these days, how does Major League Baseball become relevant again when you have a dearth of American-born players, certainly a dearth of Black American-born players? So
I don't
how do they
think
become
that's a
relevant?
big issue, Ed. I don't.
Yeah.
It's not who they, where they come from. It's not their ethnicity that people care about. It's the personality. If you're baseball, you better be selling the personalities of Elly De La Cruz. Now, look, Louise and I covered David Ortiz. I can tell you that when Elly De La Cruz smiles, I see David Ortiz. It is this glowing, beautiful, happy, joyful smile you'll still see from Big Papi. That's what baseball needs to embrace, Louise.
But unfortunately, baseball has an issue. They have very reluctant stars. Mike Trout doesn't want to be in the limelight. Mookie Betts doesn't want to be in the limelight.
Correct.
And they're in Los Angeles and surrounding area. They should be in a spotlight. But they have a lot of reluctant stars, and because of that,
okay, why?
Because I think a couple of reasons. One, the money is so big, they don't need the media anymore. They all have their social media, so they can just put out what they want to put out. And where is the gain for them? Why do all this extra effort when they don't have to anymore?
But where is the franchise then getting involved? Because every franchise, at least it used to be, they would get involved in helping to market their players, market the game, get them out in front of people. Look, the community show at the grocery store is long gone. But I honestly don't see a lot of Major League Baseball franchises being out there and making sure that their players are out there, that their stories are told. In most cases, Louise and Mike, what I see is a lot of Major League franchises who repel the media. They still do it these days. We don't need you, and don't write this and don't do that. That shit still goes on. And that hurts the game, and that hurts everybody along the line. The teams aren't out there doing it. I don't see it.
It's up to the teams to promote their product. Whether or not it would be great, like to Louise's point, if the players engaged and contributed and partnered in the engagement. But if there are reluctant superstars like Trout and Mookie Betts, both in the LA market, who don't engage, well, that's their loss, or that's their decision to make. That's fine. But these teams still have these players that they can promote, and at least if the teams show an interest in promoting them and showing the players that, hey, this is in your best interest to get involved in the community and whatnot, then I think that's the best way to use those players to promote the sport. And you hope the players get involved. If they don't, they don't.
Well, isn't it? Go ahead, Louise.
Well, Mike, would you agree, even in Boston, a city that has been so baseball, people used to live and die with each pitch.
Right.
It's Patriots town now. Red Sox aren't number one anymore. And I never thought I'd see that happen. Though I'd say Patriots may be falling off a little since Tom Brady, but they did take over for a while.
So to that point, Louise, the name you just mentioned was a big reason why. Tom Brady became bigger than he was and has been the Michael Jordan of the NFL. And you're talking about the biggest star in the biggest sport. That is going to have a monumental tidal wave impact on shifting who was the number one focus in terms of the Patriots, Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics. That was going to lift the Patriots to the top of the tidal wave. I think now it's starting to level out, and all of these teams are finding their own level ground. But certainly I think Tom Brady was a big reason why the Patriots passed the Red Sox. There's no question that they did. And I think
it's got to be more than one guy, Mike. I mean, I understand that Brady was popular, but if you really love baseball, you stick with the game. People didn't stick with the game. They found it boring, and they found it out of touch.
Yeah, but Ed, you're talking about You're talking about the most popular sport, arguably, in the world, except for maybe soccer.
The most. Okay, I'll give you that. Right behind soccer, the NFL, there's nothing bigger. You're right.
And and some people would say cricket, but anyway, I digress. NFL is clearly the number one sport in America. You're talking about the number one star in the number one sport in America. That is why the Patriots and their success. The third factor, of course, is 6 Super Bowl titles and 10 Super Bowl appearances over 20 years. That kind of impact that kind of success is going to have a substantial tidal wave impact on who is most popular in a given town.
But if you're a baseball fan, why do you abandon baseball just because there's one guy who is the generational? Sure,
but in Boston, no. In
a lot of cities, they did.
Well, yes, but I'm talking about specifically Boston here. Mm-hmm. The fans still turned out. It's just that the Red Sox made a cognizant decision. They made a definite decision to move away from the superstars once David Ortiz left the Red Sox. They were not as committed to building around superstars. Letting Mookie Betts go is certainly the number one example of that strategy, and they did it in other areas as well.
Well, Louise, does it still not come down to the fact that these franchises have to spend the money, and you have to show the fans that you are willing to spend the money, that you are willing to invest in the franchise, that you are willing to make them a winner? I've become a fan guy in my years. I stand with the fans. If you don't do everything you can to spend the money properly, give me a winner, put something on the field that's competitive, I'm out. I'm gone. I don't care. I don't want to watch. I don't want to be a fan, because for the amount of money that I've got to spend as a fan to go to the game and be involved in the game and invest my emotions in the game, you damn well better do everything you can to give me a winner. And I think that's the biggest thing right there. The owners become greedy. They don't do it. Some franchises do. Let's be honest. But a lot of franchises, they fall right off the cliff when it comes to that investment to make the fans happy.
Well, I agree with that, and that the owners, I know in baseball, have been discussing sharing their money a little bit more with the smaller markets, because it is such a disparity at this point. I mean, it always has been, but it's getting worse and worse and worse for those smaller franchises. But yes, but what we're all saying is it comes down to a good product, but having players that you want to root for. And that's why the NBA has overtaken that second spot, because even though for me, of the four major sports, I'm least interested in the NBA. I watch it, but I'm least interested in it.
I'm with you.
But I can tell you all the star players. I'd recognize every single one if they were walking in the room, and I know everything that's going on, because they make it, this fun drama. What's Kevin Durant doing now? Who's he DMing at the moment? And all these different things. What's going on in the NBA, and the players. So that draws my interest. Whereas in baseball, I mean, there are teams I may not even know who a single player is at this point.
Well, baseball's boring. I mean, look, okay, let me stop. I said the wrong thing. Well, Rob Bradford will be on the phone to me in about 30 seconds here when I say baseball's boring. The players are boring in baseball. They are not reaching out to the fans. Sure, they do on social media, but not a lot of them do it anymore because they don't want to get burned on social media, saying something stupid, having something come back at them. They become more reticent about their social media than ever before. They don't reach out to the fans as a lot of other sports do in many ways, and they're just dull. And Mike, I gotta go back to the fact that I have been told by people that they want to root for American players in the game, and some people don't see enough American-born players. And certainly it's an injustice to the black player in Major League Baseball, because American-born blacks don't even want to play the game anymore, no matter all of these RBI efforts that have been out there. And people are saying, I had a fan say to me, I don't go to Marlins games because nobody speaks English. Now, granted, that's one person saying that, but that they don't feel as if they're relatable to the fans, the players.
I got a vent here.
Go.
I don't buy that at all. I think a lot of that is a cop-out. Some of it's bullshit. The reason being is, look, I grew up with the Big Red Machine, and half of that team in the 1970s did not speak, great English. You're talking about the Tony Perez's, the Dave Concepcion's, Cesar Geronimo. I just named three players who English was not their first language. That was back in the 70s. They were clearly the most important team in any sport in the Midwest that I grew up around. That didn't impact people's interest in that team whatsoever. The team right now here in Cincinnati, the Reds, are still a very popular team, or they're becoming a popular team. They're becoming a sensation because of their personalities, and they don't all speak English. It is, how do they play the game? Do they play it in an electric fashion? Do they play it in a way that brings in fans? And over the past weekend, we saw an example of just how the Reds are starting to draw in fans, and that is, they sold out the games against the Atlanta Braves, who, by the way, have just as many players who don't speak English as the Florida Marlins or Miami Marlins. So I'm not buying the English.
Yeah, I realize I brought up just one individual. I get that, but what
I'm
bringing out is a lot of things that are in here. How does baseball solve this, Mike?
I don't think look. They solve it by playing the long game and by not, I think, submitting to gimmicks. I thought, and I was wrong about this, I thought the pitch clock was going to be a gimmick. It's definitely not a gimmick. It has resulted in the game being played at a much better pace. I think there are other things I would like to see go away. I would like to see, believe it or not, interleague play go away for the most part. I think, having this random balanced schedule throughout baseball, that's where I think people are like, who are they playing? Where are all the rivalries gone? Get more rivalries into the game, and I think you'll create more inherent interest in the local markets of these teams who, like if you're in St. Louis and the Cubs are coming to town, that's a big rivalry. If you're here in Cincinnati and the Cardinals are coming to town, that's a huge rivalry. You've got to create more regional rivalries that draw fan interest. I think when you homogenize the sport in terms of its schedule, that to me hurts baseball.
Louise, I got to tell you, Mikey's point here is perfect on this, because I remember when I came to Boston in '03, there was nothing more important in town at any time than when the Yankees and the Red Sox met. Life stopped in many ways for everybody. Now it's like, they're playing the Red Sox again. They're playing the Yankees again. Nobody gives a shit.
Yankees and okay, not that big a deal. But no, Mike is right. Rivalries, besides that, you need star players. Rivalry is everything. I mean, that's why people, college football, everyone loves, because everyone has their rival team, and it means everything. I went to USC, so when we play either UCLA or Notre Dame, it's everything. I don't care what the records are, just beat those teams. So, but yeah, it's completely, as Mike said, homogenized at this point. And, Dodgers and Padres has a little excitement because both those teams are good at least. But outside of that, there's not a lot of big rivalries going on anymore.
I got to tell you, from the perspective of, I live in South Florida, and I don't go to Miami Marlins games because I won't go to that stadium, which is an abomination, and which was basically put up with a lot of governmental help and a lot of under-the-table dealings that's going to cost the taxpayers for the next couple of decades. But let's move on past that. I don't give a shit to watch the Miami Marlins play the San Diego Padres. I don't give one damn if they play the Cincinnati Reds, a lot. I don't care even if they play the Red Sox. Where's the rivalry? Play Tampa Bay? Sure, I'll want to see that. Play Atlanta? I'll want to see that. Spend more time with the rivalry. Baseball doesn't care.
I mean, you do have to fill out a schedule, and I think part of the problem with that is
they did it before without having to play interleague.
Well, no, part of the problem is you're talking about a newer team with a very transient fan base. Like that, they're not.
No, it's a terrible fan base, Mike. It's
in the Marlins. The fan base is not really rooted down there, even though they have 2 World Series titles. You never get the sense that there's a real loyal fan base.
2 World Series titles bought and paid for by a multimillionaire who just wanted to use it as a reason so he could gain enough cred in sports to purchase the Miami Dolphins. His name is Wayne Huizenga. And that's what this whole story is. And I was all involved in that when it happened. But let's move past that, because I want to get to the Reds in a minute. So let's try and find a solution here. Out of everything we've hit on, Louise, I'll let you go first on this. The one thing that Major League Baseball has to do right now in order to regain some footing, because if they don't, they're going to slip even further. And as I noted, slip behind NFL, slip behind the NBA, slip behind certainly with attendance and with interest at MLS. Hell, they may slip behind the NHL one day. Horrors. So how do they stop the slide?
Well, my solution is just going to be kind of reiterating what we said: market players so they actually know who's playing baseball.
And who's out there, and promote them. I mean,
yeah.
See, but
absolutely. Market them, promote them, get them out there, let people know who they are. When you have an all-star game, let me know that, okay, these are actually all-stars. Because it's hard to have an all-star game when you can't name half the all-stars.
But don't the players have to buy into that as well? Because as we've talked about, some of the players don't give a shit. They don't want to be involved. They don't want to promote. So don't you have to find a way to make the players look? If you work for somebody, shouldn't there be some way for them to say, okay, you got to go here, you got to help us do this, help us market the game?
Teams do have, obligations that players have as part of their contracts with teams that they need to do. But you have to, the ones that are the stars, you kind of have to go all in on those. I mean, those are the ones that we care about. No offense to the guys coming off the bench. They could be the best personalities and they're fun locally, but
nobody cares.
Right. You have to, there's your star player. You have to find a way, whatever their comfort zone is, whether it is making TV appearances, making charity appearances, going on Sports Center, whatever it is, you got to find out, or social media, whatever, find what their comfort is and get them out there in whatever way you can.
Mike?
I mean, even remember, Tom Brady and Gronk on social media when they were with the Tampa Bay Bucks, that, the Tampa Bay Bucks would release the social media videos of the two of them, like with their feet in a kiddie pool talking. They found ways with two of the biggest names in the game to get them to do things. You are their team. You can find a way.
Okay.
Listen, here's Mike.
That...
I love Trags on this one because he sits there and he did this too in the show. It's like, okay, I've boiled enough right here. Let me go ahead and spit it out. You've seen this before.
I get the appeal of social media. I understand why there's an element of the fan base that is relevant that you need to appeal to get them engaged with the team when otherwise they wouldn't normally watch the game for the game's sake. I am still old school when it comes to this. You have to make them you have to bring attention to what they're doing on the field. Yes, the community work is going to matter. There's no question about that. But you have to make what they're being able to do on the field compelling. And to me, here in Cincinnati, all I heard over the last 2 years is how it's become a football town. And that is big in a city like Cincinnati that for decades had been a baseball town. And the Bengals, they went to a couple of Super Bowls, but the Reds were always number one. Much like the Red Sox were always number one in Boston, and the Patriots were, dragging up the rear in most cases for a good part of the, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. But in the Joe Burrow era, it's flipped. And this is now a Bengals town. And the Reds see the urgency of fielding a competitive team. And that's my whole point. You must money. Field. Well, no, not necessarily, Ed. In Cincinnati, you don't have the money. You don't have the market. You don't have NESN. You do not own your own regional sports network to pump extra cash into the payroll, the operational budget of the club. You have to find other ways. And obviously the other way is the farm system. And you have to have people who know what they're doing, who can identify talent and bring them up through the system. And that's what the Reds have done. And fortunately, a couple of those players have great personalities. Ellie De La Cruz is certainly right at the top of that in terms of being a 21-year-old kid who was raised in the Dominican but was exposed to baseball at a very young age, was very mature for, being a 15 and 16-year-old when he start getting identified. But also they went to the college ranks. They got a Jonathan India. They got a Matt McLean. Sorry, Louise, from UCLA. But they've got these younger players, and they traded away a lot of their older assets, which generated a 100-loss team last year, but is now they're reaping the fruit they sowed the seeds and are now reaping the benefits of guys like Spencer Steer, who he's a rookie player. Nobody outside Cincinnati knows who he is, but he's a rookie who they can plug in, who doesn't cost them a lot of money. That's how a team like the Reds can compete. Get the fan base.
But is it not, though, fair to say that whether it's the Reds or any franchise, I don't care about all this loyalty. You got to win. If you don't win, fans are going to be sick and tired of sitting there paying for tickets and beer
in Cincinnati
and
they will
parking.
They'll be patient.
If you don't win. Cincinnati is willing to put up with a team that doesn't win for 10 years and they'll still be loyal?
No, Ed. They're willing to put up with a team that may not win its division, may play 500 ball, may play a couple of games under 500. If they're young and exciting and feel this is the future, and the team makes the commitment to keeping them around or keeping most of the young core around, they will turn out. And I'm telling you, I saw that over the weekend when the Reds played the Braves. They sold out all 3 games at the end of June in a series that normally would have drawn 15,000, 18,000 a game. They drew 41,000 a game. And that's because the fan base believes in these young, exciting players. Hunter Green is one of their 3 young stud starting pitchers. They signed him to a 5-year, $60 million contract extension at the beginning of this season. And the point of that contract was to show the fan base, we understand your frustration. We're going to start signing some of these younger players and keep them around.
We understand your frustration, and we got to win. At the end of the day, you still have to win, Mike.
Yes, you got to win. Yes, you got to win, Ed, but you've got to be, before you win, before you run, before you sprint, you've got to take baby steps. You got to walk. Then you got to.
I'm not so sure about that anymore. I come
in
down
a
to
town like Cincinnati, where they know you don't, where they
so
know
then
they have
Cincinnati's
an
completely
owner.
different than everybody else, in your opinion. It's a completely different type of city. They'll put up with a loser.
No, because I think Mike is right. I mean, yes, there are some cities like Boston and New York that aren't going to be patient. But in other cities where if you're proving that you're trying to build for the future, they will stick with you a little longer. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that they don't want a commitment to getting better every year or every month or whatever it is. They want to see steps being taken by the organization that shows you have a plan. You know what you're doing. And that's why I think what the Reds did with their rebuild in the last 2 years is relevant.
Let me look at the other side of things here, because there is one franchise in Major League Baseball that is the most annoying, grinding. Fans want to burn it to the ground, and at the same time, they want to love it. But what I heard a discourse on WFAN the other day about the New York Mets, I thought this was a perfect example of that one franchise that it's like there's more angst going on here than in any sports franchise I can ever even imagine.
I think the only reason that we're paying attention to it is there's nothing else going on.
It's summertime.
I think I really do believe that.
If this was football, if this was September, we wouldn't give him. Yeah, we wouldn't give him 2 minutes.
But so why should we still? Like, honestly,
listen. You still have a passionate. You still have a passionate fan base out there. You still have people going to the games. They still do matter. I mean, whether you like it or not. And you in your lifetime have been a diehard Met fan. Your mom's a diehard Met fan, as you know, as you've told us. People still care. Like when I go out to, whether it's family coming over, like my uncle loves the Mets, and he just goes off on them whenever I see him because they haven't played well. And you've got a team that, whether you want to liken them to the Brooklyn Nets with the monster payroll and very little results. Right now, they've got a monster payroll, and they're giving you – I don't want to say they're giving you nothing. Like last night was a weird one. I know you slept through it, but watching the game was just last night to me was the epitome of it ain't happening this year. The idea that I heard a couple people say, well, Justin Verlander gave the Mets a good 5 innings. No, he didn't. He gave them 5 scoreless innings, but every inning was a freaking grind, and he threw 100 pitches in 5 innings. If the barometer of a good start now is 5 innings and 100 pitches, okay, then I don't know what I'm watching.
See, there's my point. I was a New York Mets fan when I was a kid. I was the only one. Everybody else in my neighborhood was a Yankees fan, but I idolized Tom Seaver until I met him 15 years later and found out what a jackass he was. But that's another story altogether. But I was a huge fan. I fell off the train completely. I mean, I didn't watch the Mets for years. I'm only now starting to wander back a little bit because at least they're doing something now that makes me think they're trying. But then it becomes this nightmarish mess that they have. I mean, that is a franchise where you want to grind your teeth, you want to beat you want to beat your hand against the desk, you want to say, "What the fuck? Come on, give me a winner!" I mean, finally do something. And you can't get it out of this team. They drive me crazy. And to me, that is the most annoying franchise in Major League Baseball, without question.
Your points are very valid. And I was going to compare them to the Clippers, but I liked their analogy to the Nets even better. Because it's hard to be mad. They did spend the money. They did try, but it's not working. However, baseball is a long season, and we're not even at the halfway point. We're getting close to the halfway point, and all you need is for them to stay in it if they can and get hot at the right time and maybe make a few adjustments. But yes, you as a Mets fan, you can be completely frustrated because
I can't think of a more frustrated fan base in any sport.
Need to do, but it's not working. So what do you want them to do? You want them to blow it up? You want them to start from scratch? What do you want them to do?
Here's why they will not blow it up, Louise. Mm-hmm. The 2022 Philadelphia Phillies, they were mediocre for the better part of 4.5 months. I wouldn't even say caught fire. They played well for the last month and a half of the season, got into the playoffs, and then they caught fire. and it made the World Series, and lost 4-2 to a very good Houston Astros team in the World Series. And the perception in Philadelphia about the 2022 season completely changed in a matter of 8 to 10 weeks. And that's what, if you're a Met fan, that's what you have to look forward to, the 2022 Phillies. And I think, one thing baseball did to extend the hopes of a lot of baseball fan bases that otherwise would tune out of their baseball clubs by, the trading deadline, August 1st, was to expand the playoffs. And they knew by doing that, you get some of these stories like the 2022 Phillies, who caught fire at the right time, got all the way to the World Series, and lost in the World Series. I mean, the Phillies were the hottest thing going before the Eagles took over in Philly. And, that's, if you're a Met fan, that's what you're hoping for this year.
Just hoping for anything, Mike, please.
And by the way,
how about not getting players who are breaking down and supposedly in their prime? They suck the joint out to where they got to get rid of them and dump them, and they're still not doing the job.
Speaking of former Red Sox,
I'm just such a fan right now. I'm being such an idiot.
I know. I understand that.
I know. I apologize.
The teams that have former Red Sox players that have fallen flat on their face, how about the San Diego Padres? Is there any team that has spent more money and gotten less bang for the buck than the Pods? And hey, credit to them. They went out, they aggressively built their positional roster. But that is the classic example, exhibit A, if you will, of a team that puts all-stars together and sometimes the chemistry ain't there.
Oh, I love, how about Xander Bogaerts of the Padres the other day saying, we have to beat a team like the Nationals. They're not a team that wants to make the playoffs. We can't lose to a team like them. Now that I like in a player. How often do you hear in baseball someone saying something like that would get people fired up?
What the fans are all thinking, Louise, right? That's what every fan is thinking. If you don't beat the Nationals, you are not a major league team. You're ridiculous.
I want to bring in a possibility here before we move on to a couple of other things, running out of time, and I want to get a couple of things in here. But if there is one thing I think that we've talked about in all this with baseball, it's the need for the players to be more open, for the fans to kind of associate more with the players. What we need are characters in the game. There are no more characters in the game. And if anybody, some will recognize this, some won't, but if you really want to think about it, baseball is littered with some of the best characters in the world in the managerial chair. And when I heard Buck Showalter the other day, and then I heard 2 or 3 other managers after losses, and it was like, just got to play hard. Just got to win. That's all we got to do.
Well, you know why
got to
that
get
is,
out there.
right?
We got to hit. Hang on.
Do you really need
on.
to ask this question?
Okay.
Go ahead.
But what we need in baseball right now to save this game are managers who just don't give a shit when somebody asks them a question.
Brett for Miller with the bases loaded in the 7th.
No, don't ask me all these stupid ass fucking questions. No. In the fuck. God, all these fucking stupid ass questions every fucking night. Why the fuck would I hit Brett for fucking Miller? Miller started the fucking game. He's playing against left-handed fucking pitchers. Brett is not playing against left-handed pitchers. Why the fuck would I bat for Miller? You think I'm a goddamn fool? I'm tired of all these ass questions every night. And stay out here asking all these dumb ass questions. Stupid. Sucker. Ask me that stupid ass shit every motherfucking night.
I'll tell you one fucking thing. I hope we get fucking hotter than shit just to stuff it up them 3,000 fucking people that show up every fucking day. Because if they're the real Chicago fucking fans, they can kiss my fucking ass right downtown and print it. They're really, really behind you around here. My fucking ass.
What's your opinion of Kingman's performance? What's my opinion of Kingman's performance? What the fuck you think is my opinion of it? I think it was fucking horseshit. Put that in. I don't fucking opinion of his performance. Jesus Christ, he beat us with 3 fucking home runs. What the fuck can you mean? What is my opinion of his performance? How can you ask me a question like that? What is my opinion of his performance? Jesus Christ, he hit 3 home runs. Jesus Christ. I'm fucking pissed off to lose a fucking game. And you ask me my opinion of his performance. Jesus Christ.
That's what I want to see back in baseball. Hal
The good old
McRae, Lee
days.
Elia, Tommy Lasorda. I want to see the managers get pissed off. I want to see them scream, throw something, do anything. Have some emotion in all this. I don't see any emotion in baseball anymore. When I hear Buck Showalter, I think he's got to be on some sort of serious meds. I mean, the man looks like he's going to fall asleep in the middle of a press conference any second now. We got to win more games. We got to get more hits. Come on! Get fired up! And I love the fact that Mikey P was laughing his ass off during that. I could see him on the camera. Because those of us who've been in the game for any length of time, we all know those bits. We've seen and heard those. I remember when those are being passed around by Les Grobstein out of Chicago, who had it on a cassette, and he used to carry it with him, and he used to play that for people in the press box because nobody had it at that time.
Yeah, the Earl Weavers throwing bases or Jim Leyritz smoking a cigarette in the dugout, those days are definitely gone. We have gone very politically correct in all answers.
And Lou Piniella here in Cincinnati. What did Louise always tell me in the press box? It always comes back to Cincinnati. Lou Piniella had some of the greatest rants. Remember, Lou Piniella, and Rob Dibble is a very close friend of mine. He was the one who got into a fight with Lou in the clubhouse with the cameras rolling, and they had a brawl. They had a wrestling match on the floor of the Reds clubhouse. You're not going to see those anymore. And yes, I do miss that. But to quote Louise, it's all become robotic. These guys, the players, a lot of the players are robotic. The managers need to pace the players over the course of 162 games. How often do we hear that? And the result is you take all of the explosiveness and all of the passion, or a lot of the passion, out of the game, and you're not going to see those type of rants anymore. You're just not.
I want more Gronkowskis in the game, people like that. And it would seem like the National Football League has those players who are willing to step out a little bit and at least have some fun every now and then. Unfortunately, in the NBA, most of the stuff that is fun is when Shaquille O'Neal goes off on a great rant. He's awesome when he gets going in the postgame show.
He is.
But the NBA
best.
is known more right now for guys waving guns on social media videos than anything else. And that gets a lot of attention for the NBA. But I don't see these guys reaching out. And I think, quite frankly, they're scared shitless because they're afraid that if they do something that's on social media, and can you imagine if Lasorda or if Hal McRae's bit went viral today, throwing shit in his office and leaving one of the reporters bloody on the cheek. Holy crap.
Fired on the spot.
They have police waiting for him at the door right now to arrest him for assault. And I mean, it's
just a different era.
They're scared at this point.
No, believe me, I would tell when I worked on the radio side at ESPN, the last few years, I would tell my hosts, I feel really badly for you. It must be so hard to be a talk show talent in this day and age where one word wrong, you're fired. Every word has to be so politically correct nowadays. We've swung way too far to the other side. So yeah, and that includes managers, players, teams. It's all about the image. Yep. It's all about not embarrassing the team. It's boring.
Well, see, that's just it. It's all about not embarrassing the team. And these guys embarrass themselves and embarrass it. But we looked at it as entertainment. It was funny. I mean, to hear Lasorda go off on the Kingman 3 home runs is one of the greatest things of all time. Lee Elia should have gotten an Oscar for everything that he threw up there in the Chicago Cubs. And that was only a piece of what he said. He went off on this for a good 3-4 minutes. But I think people, maybe we're past that. All right? Maybe characters, you're just not going to see them anymore. Maybe people don't want to see them. Maybe I'm living in the past.
Too much
a little
money,
bit,
Ed.
Guys.
No,
too much money to be lost.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It is. But you have to, like you mentioned, Gronk. He was lovable. He wasn't controversial. He was a lovable type of character, but when you're controversial, that's
He
when you
wasn't
get in trouble.
dangerous.
Right.
You know, everything he did was goofy Gronk, screwing around, having fun, the practical joke kind of thing. And I don't think players want to do it because they're afraid it's going to be seen as, it's going to be viewed incorrectly, is what they're going to say. What I said, oh, gee, I really didn't mean it that way. And unfortunately, that's social media. But unfortunately, it's also part, and boy, we could go off for a long time on this one. When we were in locker rooms, and I got to learn the Red Sox locker room through both of you, who kind of guided me around and showed me a little bit of, the pecking order at that time. But there was a trust factor with the players. They knew Louise when she wouldn't do anything to harm them. They knew Mike was a guy who wasn't going to do anything or put anything out there that would make them look bad. I got there to the point where eventually the players knew me, and they knew, look, all I want is, the fun I had with Pokey Reese and some of the other players was great, but now you have an element of media that walks into these locker rooms, or even if they're not in the locker rooms at all, what they're all about is as much bullshit as they can possibly put out there, and the players don't trust the press anymore. Am I wrong?
No, you're not, but it's like, goes back to what I said earlier. Players don't need the press anymore. There was a time when they needed the press. That's how they got their names out there. They have their own social teams themselves on social media. They don't need us, and that's why if you were in the Red Sox locker room now, well, A, it looks completely different, but B, good luck finding a player in there. They have tons of rooms that they can go and hang out. They just can pass through at the very end. It's not like everyone hanging out in there and you had to talk to us. It's very different now, and they don't need us.
A couple of things I want to get out before we leave here and have a little fun with some of this. I've been kind of holding this for a while, and I haven't gotten around to this in some of the earlier shows. Ted Lasso still remains to me the best series with a sports background I have ever seen. It was so beautifully written, so beautifully acted, so wonderfully done. And of course, now everybody wants to know if they're coming back and doing another one, or if they're actually going to end, which Rich Eisen brought up recently to Jason Sudeikis.
The $1 million question, yes. Is this the end of Ted Lasso or what?
I mean, I really, I've always meant what I said, where it's like, this was the story we wanted to tell, right. And I mean, that would be evident when episode 12 is out and available. So it feels a little silly to keep going back to it. But again, not anticipating or ever expecting or imagining people's reaction or response to it. Also, with the process of making it being such a joyful one, and one that we really bust our buns at doing, and yet it still is very fulfilling, and it's not at least it doesn't feel toxic to me, that it's like, okay, maybe there's more there, but it has to come from the stories and the characters, and we have to satisfy these ends here before really having that conversation. It feels a little bit like talking about next season when you're in the playoffs. It's kind of like it's
you got to finish. So is there going to be just a Lasso summit or something?
It'll probably be the same way this whole thing started, with me and Joe and Brendan, sitting in a pool, making each other laugh and being like, what do we think, and just sort of staying open to the universe of things. The business side of things is a whole other complication. Understood. But it has to come from the root of the where we'd want the story to go, where we'd want to go further, how we'd want it to evolve, the character evolution. And we don't need it all fleshed out, but just a notion of what, why, of a better why than just cause.
I think that's a great way to come up with a creative process. Just sit back in the pool somewhere, drinking beer, having cocktails, and come up with a show, which is what they did. But my point is this: there really is no such thing as a sports movie. All right? Now, sports is a background to movies and a background to series. But if you think about it, every movie that has sports in it is about personal relationships, triumphs and tribulations, guys learning about themselves, people learning about what they can do, leadership, all these qualities. There really is no sports movies that are out there. All they are is a convenient background. So I try to find, and I wanted to throw it out to you guys, which movie, is there one that you can think of that is really about the game, really about the sport itself, and doesn't deal with all the extra nonsense out there that becomes romantic, social, all the other crap. I can't think of one.
No, I mean, because I don't think people want to just watch. If they just want to watch sports, they'll watch sports on TV. There's elements. I would think a movie like Miracle was heavy sport, and kind of trying to tell a documentary kind of style without tons of fluff. Look, Rocky's my favorite movie of all time, but that's not because of the boxing. It's the story of the underdog. But I actually, when you had mentioned this topic, I think sports movies are changing, because I recently saw the movie Air, about how Michael Jordan came to Nike. And I think that's what people now want to see. We've done all the football, the basketball, she got
behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, we've done all that. Now it's give me the behind the scenes stuff. I didn't know that Michael Jordan's mom had such a big influence on him. Give me the behind the scenes stuff. That, I think, is the next evolution of sports movies.
So a tip of the cap to Louise's now former employer. The ESPN docudrama, The Bronx is Burning, is my favorite. And the reason being, and this will shock neither of you, I love the 1970s. And what that series did was to marry history and the current events, the dramatic current events of the time, the 1970s, 1977 in Manhattan, the Son of Sam murder, all of that going around a very volatile baseball team. And I thought the way they did that over 8 episodes was very, very interesting. And obviously you had a very explosive manager-player relationship in Billy Martin and Reggie Jackson. And, there were times where I thought that it was a little cringy, but not really. I actually thought they nailed those two characters pretty well. But that's the kind of thing that really appeals to me as an old-time sports fan. And I think it appeals to a lot of people who want to know the context of sports back in a particular period.
Yeah, I think it's the documentaries set themselves very well when you want to learn about it. But every sports movie always has that, I think about Bull Durham right away. What was Bull Durham about? It was about the relationship between a man and a woman, and a guy learning that he was getting a little bit older. And if you think about it, The Natural was all about somebody who was taken in and somebody learning to be a little bit more powerful in how they want to be taken and overcome a great young issue that happened in their lives. So sports movies in their essence are not about sports, but they kind of use it as a background. And I think Louise kind of hit it on the head. There probably is no movie that's done it better than Rocky. I mean, to this day, it's just, it's brilliant to watch. And Stallone was at his best. And being a boxing guy, I happen to love that movie anyway. Before we go, I want to make sure we get something in here, because I told Louise before the show that there was a surprise for her. Louise has now joined not only the wonderful community in Florida, but we need to think about something here. First of all, Louise has been there and done it when it comes to all the trophies that she has been associated with by being a part of ESPN. Louise, that is the best damn picture that I swear to God, there are people in the world who would want to have that picture, want to Photoshop themselves behind that picture, because you've got baseball, hockey, basketball, football trophies. We surrender. You get the best picture of all time.
Thank you. It was a random day at Boston Garden. Was there covering the Bruins, and a camera guy came up to me and said, "I think all 4 trophies are here from the Boston sports teams. You want to explore with me?" And we looked around, found it, and said, "Can we take a picture with them too?" Because it was for all the VIPs, and they said, "Sure." And so I got the best picture in the world. But yes, that encapsulates my time in Boston, getting to see all the Boston sports teams win a championship.
But there are other pictures that speak to what Louise is doing now, which are even more important, because now that she no longer has to be involved with ESPN, with the day-to-day and these idiotic talents that you have to deal with as programmers, these clowns, for crying out loud, she can now do something much more important in her life, which is appear on stage with a marvelous red hat. You have got to explain this picture, please.
So I was a theater major at the University of Southern California, and fortunately for me, in the area that I live in Florida, is a thriving theater community. So I do plays constantly. And this was a play about a month ago. It was a 10-minute short play where I was playing an activist who believed in saving gnomes. So I dressed up. I was in the process of putting on gnome hats and fairy wings and all sorts of stuff. And then a giant sea monster ate me at the end. So
well, yeah. Okay. Well, seeing as you brought up the sea monster, it is fair to say that if you're going to be in the play, be with the sea. Wait a minute. That's not just any sea monster. That's the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah. That's a sea monster, and not the one in blue. That's my husband. The one in the middle is the sea monster.
Oh, he's looking right now going, oh boy, we're going to have some discussions when we come home. But you are now part of my community. You're now part of myself as a member of Screen Actors Guild, and I've done a number of these over the years, for the last 30 years. So it's nice to have you on board. As we now, the next time you're on the show, it is not going to be Louise Cornetta, former program manager, director for ESPN. Mm-hmm. It's going to be Louise Cornetta, thespian.
Yes. Oh, I just filmed a movie last weekend, so I'm trying to catch up with you, Ed.
Get out! What do you mean? Wait a minute. We can't go now, because now that you said that, we can't go until you tell us what movie can you tell us about it?
Sure. It's called Intersection. It's will debut at the Naples Film Festival in July, and then we'll see where it goes.
Mike, any possibility that we could possibly see you getting involved in? You would be great in a movie. If they're shooting a movie in Cincinnati and they need a sports guy, if they're not looking you up, somebody's missing the boat.
I will ask you to call everybody you know. Louise, do the same. And if you can find me a part, I will be more than willing to accept, yes. But in the meantime, I will be hosting the Jungle Roar Pod. You can find that channel at Jungle Roar Pod on YouTube. How's that for self-promotion?
You can see, that's the beautiful thing about this show. You can self-promote all day. I mean, I tell every guest that comes on here, you got a book, you got something, you push it. Go ahead. Matter of fact, let's put the order forms in there. Why not? But if you want to go ahead and catch up with Mike, who writes and does great work. And by the way, I'm just going to say it, he's one of my favorite people of all time. He's a great friend. Both of these folks are. But Louise, I got to tell you, when I was in Boston, and I knew Mike before I got to Boston. There was something you and I had connected somewhere while I was working in Denver, and somewhere over the years we had connected. And
yes,
I wanted to get Mike on the show, and there's no one who sat across the desk from me who was like on it. I mean, right on the edge of his seat constantly, and bringing it every damn night about Boston sports. Nobody did it better than you, Mr. Petralia. Nobody.
Oh, I appreciate that. You're too kind. Very, very kind. It was a legendary epic. I like the word epic. It was an epic run in Boston sports history, unprecedented as well. And it was great. And part of that was meeting all the people that I met. And certainly you both are part of that equation.
And if people want to, I mean, Louise, of course, is out there on social media now. You can tell her that. And if you're in Southwest Florida, what's the name of the theater group?
So there's several different theater groups, but right now have formed my own theater group, and I'm performing a one-woman show, Irma Bombeck, since you said go self-promote, at tons of different country clubs and places around. So, yep, reach me on social media, and I'm happy to book a performance there.
Outstanding. See, the things you know when you do a show and you get people on the air. You can find out more from Louise. You can go to her Twitter and her Instagram and Facebook and her LinkedIn. You can find out everything that she is doing there. And I always remind people that while Louise is there, as far as I'm concerned, I'm everywhere. I got social media coming out my ears. I got way too much. Although I got to tell you, doing this show has been the best thing in the world, because it allows me to get back in touch with all the people that are close to me in my life, and that I just want to say, and I'll put this down on tape forever, I want to thank the two of you, because you were so warm and so welcoming in my time in Boston. The two of you helped make that experience so incredibly special, along with the fact that I'm the guy that helped bring the 04 World Series to the Red Sox, because you guys lost every year until I got there. And then I got there and took the show. Red Sox win the World Series.
Thank you.
I take full credit for absolutely nothing I did. And that makes it fun. Thank you very much, guys. Mike, Louise, we're going to do it again. Pete will be back on the show soon. We'll get all four of us together here one day, and we'll have that kind of.
Pete and I worked together at WEI, so I long time ago, but I love.
There's so many things, so many stories that we could tell, but we don't need lawyers, and
Yes.
that's it's always the biggest problem. Thank you very much, the two of you. I love you both. I am here to help you in whatever you do, and I hope we do this a million more times. For Mike Petraglia, for Louise Cornetta, for myself, for everybody here, I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget, at Best Damn Sports Talk, period, on the YouTube channel, please go and subscribe and join us there on a regular basis. For everybody, I'm Ed Berliner. Rock on, true believers. See ya!
You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for Deadpool 2. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What are you expecting? Sam Jackson show up with an eye patch and a saucy little leather number? Go.